He was being mocked right in front of everyone, but what he did next left the entire class speechless. Before I continue, if stories like this inspire you, subscribe to the channel now, so you don't miss the next ones. I still remember that morning like it was yesterday. The smell of paint and colored pencils filled the air of Ms. Thompson's art class at Lincoln Middle School. It was a typical Wednesday in October, with rain tapping against the windows and the fluorescent lights humming above our heads. I was sitting in the back corner of the classroom, my usual spot where I could observe everything without being noticed. That's when I first really noticed Ethan Miller, a skinny 12-year-old with worn-out clothes and a quiet demeanor that made him almost invisible most days. While other students unpacked their expensive art supplies, the latest Prismacolor pencils, Copic markers that cost more than some family's dinner, Ethan quietly pulled out a small cardboard box containing a few broken colored pencils, a stubby eraser, and a notebook that had clearly seen better days. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. These kids with their designer backpacks and state-of-the-art supplies barely appreciated what they had, while Ethan treated each broken pencil like a treasure, carefully selecting which one to use for the assignment that day. Ms. Thompson, a woman in her early 50s with kind eyes behind stylish glasses, had announced our project for the month. Draw something that represents where you come from. It seemed simple enough, but I could see Ethan's face fall slightly at the announcement. But that simple routine was about to turn into something none of us expected. As the class began working, the usual social dynamics quickly emerged. The popular kids clustered together, laughing and sharing supplies, while others worked alone or in smaller groups. Ethan sat by himself, hunched over his paper, using a small pencil sharpener to salvage what little remained of his colored pencils. That's when Brad Wilson, the unofficial king of 8th grade, decided to make Ethan his target for the day. Brad was the type of kid who had everything: wealthy parents, athletic ability, and the latest everything. He also had a cruel streak that teachers often missed because of his charming smile and well-connected family. "Hey, Goodwill," Brad called out, using the nickname he'd created for Ethan, referencing the second-hand store. "What are you drawing with, leftovers from kindergarten?" A few of Brad's friends snickered. I watched Ethan's shoulders tense, but he kept drawing, pressing down harder with his pencil. "Seriously, dude," Brad continued louder now. "My little sister has better supplies than that. Did you dig those out of the trash?" Each word increased the tension in the room. Some students looked uncomfortable but remained silent. Ms. Thompson had stepped out briefly to speak with another teacher, leaving the perfect opportunity for this to escalate. I could see Ethan's face turning red, his hand trembling slightly as he continued to work. The room had grown quieter as more students tuned in to the drama unfolding. Brad, encouraged by the attention, stood up and walked over to Ethan's desk. "Let's see what poverty art looks like," he said, reaching for Ethan's paper. What happened next changed everything in that classroom. As Brad's hand moved toward his drawing, Ethan didn't yell or push back physically. Instead, he simply looked up, made eye contact with Brad, and said in a clear, steady voice, "Just because my supplies are broken doesn't mean my art is. Please don't touch it." The simplicity and dignity of his response created a moment of stunned silence. Brad, expecting fear or anger, seemed momentarily confused by Ethan's calm demeanor, but he quickly recovered. "Oh, so Trash Boy has a voice," he sneered. "Let's see if your art is as pathetic as your supplies." Brad snatched the drawing from Ethan's desk. As he held it up, his mocking expression slowly changed to one of surprise. Even from where I sat, I could see what had stunned him into silence. Despite the broken pencils and tattered materials, Ethan had created something extraordinary. It was a drawing of a small apartment building, but with such detail and perspective that it seemed to leap off the page. Each window told a story: an elderly woman watering plants, children playing, a couple arguing, a man playing guitar, and in one window, a single mother and young boy at a table with a small lamp, working on something together. The drawing wasn't just technically impressive, it was full of life and emotion. It was clear that Ethan had real talent, a gift that transcended his limited supplies. If this story has moved you so far, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel because there are other real and emotional stories that you can't miss. The entire class had fallen silent, gathering around to see the drawing that had silenced Brad. Even the most popular girls who normally wouldn't acknowledge Ethan's existence were moving closer, trying to get a look at his work. Brad's face flushed with embarrassment. He'd expected to find something to mock, not something that made his own careful but soulless landscape look amateurish by comparison. Whatever, he mumbled, dropping the drawing back on Ethan's desk before retreating to his seat. It was at that exact moment that Ms. Thompson returned to the classroom, immediately sensing the shift in atmosphere. "What's going on?" she asked, looking around at the unusually quiet students. Nobody spoke at first. Then Jamie, a quiet girl who rarely participated in class, pointed to Ethan's desk. "You should see Ethan's drawing, Ms. Thompson. It's amazing." Ms. Thompson walked over, her eyebrows raised in curiosity. As she looked at Ethan's work, her expression transformed from interest to genuine amazement. "Ethan," she said softly, "how long have you been drawing like this?" Ethan shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "Always, I guess. My mom used to draw before she had to take on extra shifts. She taught me some things." Ms. Thompson studied the drawing more carefully. "This apartment building? Is this where you live?" Ethan nodded. "Yes, ma'am. 3rd floor, 2nd window from the left." The small lamp I'd noticed in the drawing suddenly made sense. It was Ethan and his mother, perhaps working on homework, or maybe even drawing together by the light of a single lamp because they couldn't afford to keep all the lights on. "Would you mind if I show this to the class?" Ms. Thompson asked. Ethan hesitated, then nodded slowly. Ms. Thompson carefully picked up the drawing and held it up for everyone to see. "This," she said, "is what art is about. Not expensive supplies or perfect technique, but seeing the world around you and bringing it to life for others to experience." As she walked around the room, letting everyone get a closer look, I could see Ethan's discomfort, but also a small flicker of pride in his eyes. "Notice the perspective," Ms. Thompson continued, now in full teaching mode. "The way Ethan has created depth with just simple pencils. And look at the expressions on these tiny faces in the windows. Each one tells a story." The class was unusually attentive, genuinely impressed by what they were seeing. Even Brad looked somewhat chastened, though he tried to maintain an uninterested expression. When the bell rang, signaling the end of class, Ms. Thompson asked Ethan to stay behind for a moment. I lingered too, pretending to organize my supplies while listening to their conversation. "Ethan, how would you feel about entering the district art competition next month?" Ms. Thompson asked. "Your work has real potential." Ethan looked down at his worn-out supplies. "I don't think I can, Ms. Thompson. These are the only art supplies we have at home and they're almost used up." Ms. Thompson's expression softened with understanding. "I see. Well, let me think about this and we'll talk again tomorrow, okay?" Ethan nodded and hurried out of the classroom, probably eager to escape the unexpected attention. The next day, I arrived early to art class, curious about what might happen. Ethan wasn't there yet, but Ms. Thompson was arranging something on his desk, a brand new art set with colored pencils, charcoal, pastels, and a sketch pad. When Ethan walked in and saw the supplies, he froze in the doorway, his eyes wide with disbelief. "These are for you," Ms. Thompson said simply. "They're not from the school budget, so don't worry about that. Let's just say they're an investment in your future." What she didn't say, but what I found out later, was that she had purchased the supplies with her own money. On a teacher's salary, it wasn't a small expense, but she had recognized something in Ethan that she couldn't ignore. Ethan stared at the supplies, then at Ms. Thompson. "I can't accept these," he said quietly. "They're too much." "You can and you will," Ms. Thompson replied firmly. "But there's a condition. You have to enter the district competition, and you have to help me start an after-school art club for students who want to improve their skills." I watched as Ethan processed this information, realizing that Ms. Thompson had found a way for him to accept the gift while maintaining his dignity. He wasn't receiving charity. He was being given tools in exchange for sharing his talent. "Okay," he agreed finally, a small smile forming. "Thank you, Ms. Thompson." As other students began filing into the classroom, I noticed something interesting. Brad, who had been so quick to mock Ethan the day before, was looking at him differently, not with respect exactly, but with a new awareness, as if seeing him for the first time. Word about Ethan's drawing had spread throughout the school, and suddenly the invisible boy wasn't so invisible anymore. Students who had never spoken to him were asking to see his work, wondering if he could give them tips on their own drawings. The shift was subtle, but undeniable. In a school environment where social status was typically determined by wealth, athletic ability, or physical appearance, Ethan had revealed a different kind of currency: raw, undeniable talent. Over the next few weeks, I watched as Ethan gradually emerged from his shell. With proper supplies and Ms. Thompson's encouragement, his artwork became even more impressive. The after-school art club quickly became popular, with Ethan shyly but effectively showing techniques to students who had previously ignored him. What was most remarkable, though, was how Ethan handled his new visibility. There was no gloating, no attempt to leverage his talent for social gain. He remained humble, sometimes even seeming surprised by the positive attention. When other students complimented his work, he would often deflect by pointing out something he liked about theirs. As the district competition approached, excitement built in the art class. Ms. Thompson had submitted 3 entries from our school, including Ethan's latest work, an expanded version of his apartment building scene, now rendered in full color with his new supplies. The day before the competition results were announced, something unexpected happened. I arrived at art class to find Brad, of all people, sitting next to Ethan, asking him questions about shading techniques. Their conversation wasn't exactly friendly, but it wasn't hostile either, more like a reluctant acknowledgement of skill. "I don't get how you make things look so real," Brad was saying. "I've been trying to draw my dog for like 3 hours and it looks like some weird mutant creature." Ethan hesitated, then reached for Brad's sketch pad. "May I?" he asked. Brad nodded and Ethan studied the drawing for a moment. "The proportions are good," he said, "but you're pressing too hard with the pencil. Try holding it like this." He demonstrated a lighter touch, creating softer lines. Brad watched intently, then tried to mimic the technique. "Like this?" he asked. Ethan nodded. "That's better. Now try adding shadow here and here." He pointed to areas of the drawing without touching it. "That will make it look more three-dimensional." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The boy who had been bullied was now teaching his bully, and doing it without a hint of resentment or superiority. Ms. Thompson, watching from her desk, caught my eye and smiled slightly. We both knew we were witnessing something significant, a small moment of human connection that transcended the usual social barriers. The next day, the results of the district competition were announced. Ethan's drawing had won first place in the middle school division, earning him not only recognition but a $200 prize to be used for art supplies. When Ms. Thompson announced the news to the class, there was a spontaneous round of applause. Ethan's face turned bright red, but his smile was genuine. What happened next surprised us all even more than the competition results. After class, Ethan approached Ms. Thompson with the prize notification in his hands. "Ms. Thompson," he said, "I want to donate half of this prize money to the art club, so other kids can have supplies too." The classroom had emptied out, but I was still gathering my things and overheard this exchange. I pretended to be focused on organizing my backpack, but I couldn't help watching this interaction from the corner of my eye. Ms. Thompson looked genuinely moved. "That's very generous, Ethan. Are you sure? You could use that money for more advanced supplies for yourself." Ethan nodded firmly. "My mom always says that when good things happen, you should pass them on. Besides," he added with a small smile, "I already have everything I need thanks to you." I watched as Ms. Thompson blinked rapidly, clearly fighting back tears. "Well then," she said, "we'll make sure it helps as many students as possible." That conversation stuck with me for days afterward. Here was a kid who had so little, yet his first instinct upon receiving something was to share it. I couldn't help wondering if I would have done the same in his position. The next week, Ms. Thompson announced that thanks to Ethan's donation and some additional funds she had secured from the principal, the art club would be able to provide basic supply kits to any student who needed them. She didn't specifically mention Ethan as the donor, respecting his modesty, but many of us knew where the initial funds had come from. What none of us expected was how this small act of generosity would ripple through our school. When Brad heard about the anonymous donation from another student, something changed in his expression. He cornered me after class one day, since he'd seen me talking to Ethan occasionally. "Was it really Miller who donated that money?" he asked, his tone surprisingly free of mockery. I shrugged, not wanting to betray a confidence. "Does it matter who it was?" Brad was quiet for a moment. "I guess not," he finally said. "It's just, my dad always says people from that side of town just want handouts. But that's not a handout. That's the opposite. I could almost see the cognitive dissonance playing out on his face, the contradiction between what he'd been taught about people with less money and what he was actually witnessing firsthand. The art club meetings became a highlight of the school week. Ethan, initially reluctant to take any leadership role, gradually became more comfortable demonstrating techniques to other students. Ms. Thompson would set up different stations around the classroom, and Ethan often managed the sketching area, patiently showing others how to create depth and perspective with simple pencil strokes. What was most fascinating was how the club broke down some of the school's rigid social boundaries. Kids who would never interact in the cafeteria or hallways were sitting side by side, sharing supplies and complimenting each other's work. Popular students worked alongside quiet loners, athletes next to bookworms, all connected by their interest in creating something. About a month after the competition, I arrived early to an art club meeting and found Ethan sitting alone, working intensely on a new drawing. This one was different from his previous works. It showed a classroom full of students drawing together, with Ms. Thompson watching proudly from her desk. "That's really good," I said, sliding into the seat beside him. "Is it for another competition?" Ethan shook his head. "It's for Ms. Thompson. Her birthday is next week. I wanted to thank her properly." I studied the drawing more carefully. "You've included everyone from the art club." "Almost everyone," he said, pointing to a blank space at one of the tables. "I haven't put you in yet." I was surprised he'd noticed me enough to include me. "You don't have to do that. But you're part of this too," he insisted. "You were one of the first people who was nice to me. Before," he gestured vaguely, seemingly referring to his newfound recognition. His observation touched me. I hadn't done anything extraordinary, just small kindnesses like lending him an eraser or complimenting his work. But apparently those minor gestures had registered when he was feeling most invisible. When other students began arriving for the club meeting, Ethan carefully tucked his drawing away. It was clearly something private between him and Ms. Thompson, not meant for public display. That day's project was creating mandalas, intricate circular designs that required precision and patience. Ms. Thompson explained that mandalas were used in various cultures as meditation tools and symbols of unity and wholeness. As we worked, I noticed Brad struggling with the precise patterns. His athletic hands, so adept at catching footballs, seemed clumsy with the delicate line work required. Without prompting, Ethan moved over to sit beside him. "Try holding your wrist steady on the table," he suggested quietly, "and rotate the paper instead of your hand when you're drawing the curved lines." Brad looked up, startled, but then tried the technique. "Huh," he said as his lines became more even. "That actually works. My mom taught me that," Ethan said. "She used to draw these amazing circular patterns when I was little. Said it helped her relax after long shifts." It was the first time I'd heard Ethan volunteer personal information, especially to Brad of all people. There was a moment of awkward silence, and I wondered if Brad would revert to his usual mockery. Instead, he just nodded. "She sounds cool. My mom can't even draw stick figures." It wasn't exactly friendship forming, but it was something, a small bridge across the vast social gulf that had separated them. Ms. Thompson, observing this interaction from across the room, caught my eye and gave a small nod of approval. We were witnessing something rare in middle school, genuine growth and change in how students perceived each other. The following week, Miss Thompson's birthday arrived, and Ethan presented her with his finished drawing, now framed in a simple wooden frame that, I later learned, his mother had helped him find at a thrift store and refinish. Ms. Thompson's reaction was everything Ethan could have hoped for. She stared at the drawing for a long moment, taking in all the details, then looked up with eyes that were distinctly watery. "Ethan," she said, "this is the most thoughtful gift I've ever received from a student. You've captured everyone so perfectly." She ran her fingers lightly over the glass. "I'll treasure this forever." The pride on Ethan's face was unmistakable, though he tried to downplay it with a casual shrug. Ms. Thompson displayed the drawing prominently on her desk, where it became a talking point for other teachers and students. Several faculty members came specifically to the art room to see the drawing that everyone was talking about, and each time, Ms. Thompson made sure to identify Ethan as the artist. As winter approached, our school announced its annual Winter Arts Festival, an evening showcase of student talent across various disciplines: music, dance, theater, and visual arts. Ms. Thompson immediately submitted several works from art club members, including 3 of Ethan's pieces. The festival is a big deal, she explained to us during class. Parents, community members, even some local artists attend. It's a wonderful opportunity for your work to be seen by a wider audience. For most students, this was exciting news, but I noticed Ethan's expression fall slightly at the announcement. After class, I overheard him speaking quietly with Ms. Thompson. "I don't think my mom can come," he was saying. "She works double shifts on Fridays at the hospital cafeteria. We really need the overtime pay right now." Ms. Thompson nodded understandingly. "I'm sorry to hear that, Ethan, but your work will still be displayed, and I'll make sure to take plenty of photos to show her afterward." Ethan nodded, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Having his art displayed meant little if his mother, the person who had first inspired his love of drawing, couldn't be there to see it. That evening, I mentioned this situation to my mom over dinner. My mother worked as an administrator at the same hospital where Ethan's mom apparently worked in food service. "Thompson," my mom repeated thoughtfully. "Thin woman, dark hair, always in a bun, always picks up extra shifts." "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never met her, but her son said she works double shifts on Fridays in the cafeteria." My mom nodded slowly. "I think I know who she is. Lisa Thompson. She's always volunteering for the difficult shifts. Incredibly hard worker." An idea began forming in my mind. "Mom, do you think, is there any way she could get that Friday evening off for just a couple of hours? It's really important." My mother gave me a curious look. "Why is this so important to you?" I explained about Ethan, his extraordinary talent, and how much it would mean to have his mother at the festival. As I spoke, I realized how invested I had become in Ethan's story, how much I wanted this small piece of recognition for him. My mom listened thoughtfully, then pulled out her phone. "Let me see what I can do. No promises, but I might be able to arrange something." Over the next week, preparations for the Winter Arts Festival intensified. The art room became a flurry of activity as students finished pieces, created labels, and helped Ms. Thompson plan the display layout. Ethan was working on a new piece, a winter scene of our school courtyard with students building snowmen and having snowball fights, though we hadn't had our first snow yet. "It's like wishful thinking," he explained when I asked about it. "I'm hoping it'll snow soon." 3 days before the festival, my mother came home with news. I spoke with Mrs. Thompson today, she told me. "We've arranged for someone to cover her shift for 3 hours during the festival. She'll be able to attend." "Did you tell her why?" I asked excitedly. My mom shook her head. "I just said there was a school event that her son really wanted her to attend. I thought Ethan might want to surprise her with his artwork himself." The day of the festival arrived, bringing with it the first snowfall of the season. Light flurries that dusted the school grounds in a thin layer of white, as if Ethan's drawing had somehow conjured it into being. The gymnasium had been transformed into a gallery space with portable walls displaying student artwork from all grades. Ms. Thompson had arranged for special lighting to be installed, giving the artwork a professional presentation that elevated even the simplest pieces. Ethan's drawings had been given a prominent position near the entrance, ensuring that every visitor would see them upon arriving. His original apartment building drawing, the one that had first revealed his talent to the class, was displayed alongside his newer works, showing his artistic evolution over just a few months. As students and parents began arriving for the festival, I kept glancing toward the door, watching for Ethan and his mother. The art students had been asked to arrive early to help with last-minute arrangements, but Ethan had mentioned he would be coming later with his mom, meeting her at the hospital after her shift ended and before her next one began. Ms. Thompson was nervously checking her watch as well. "I hope they make it," she murmured to me as she adjusted the display card beside one of Ethan's drawings. "This means so much to him, even though he tries not to show it." The festival officially began at 6 p.m., with our principal giving a short welcome speech. By 6:30, most families had arrived, and the gymnasium was buzzing with conversation as parents and community members admired the student work. Several people were gathered around Ethan's display, commenting on his technique and originality. At 6:45, I spotted them. Ethan walking beside a slender woman still dressed in her hospital uniform, her dark hair pulled back in the neat bun my mother had described. She looked tired, but was smiling, as Ethan led her by the hand through the crowded gymnasium. I nudged Ms. Thompson and pointed discreetly. She immediately made her way through the crowd to greet them, while I followed a few steps behind. "Mrs. Thompson," Ms. Thompson said, extending her hand. "I'm so glad you could make it." "I'm Julie Thompson, no relation obviously. Ethan's art teacher." "Lisa," Ethan's mother replied, shaking her hand. "And thank you for the invitation. I'm still not sure how this all worked out with my schedule, but I'm grateful." Ms. Thompson gave me a quick wink over Mrs. Thompson's shoulder, acknowledging my small role in the evening's arrangement. "Mom," Ethan said, tugging at his mother's sleeve, "come see my drawings. They're over here." As Ethan led his mother toward his display, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Despite his obvious excitement, he was also nervous, fidgeting with his sleeve, glancing repeatedly at his mother's face, as if unsure of her reaction. It struck me then that for all his talent, Ethan was still just a 12-year-old boy who wanted his mother to be proud of him. All the recognition from teachers and peers was meaningful, but nothing compared to having his mother see his work displayed with honor. I hung back, giving them space, but I was close enough to see Mrs. Thompson's face as she took in Ethan's artwork. Her expression transformed from polite interest to amazement and then to something deeper, a complex blend of pride, recognition, and perhaps a touch of bittersweet emotion. "Ethan," she whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. They're just like your father's drawings." Ethan looked up at her, clearly surprised by this comparison. "Dad's?" She nodded, reaching out to trace the air just above the glass covering his apartment building drawing. He had this same eye for detail, the same way of making ordinary things look special. "I haven't seen drawing like this since—" She didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. Ethan's father was no longer in the picture, but his artistic legacy lived on in his son. "You never told me Dad could draw," Ethan said softly. Mrs. Thompson smiled sadly. "There are a lot of things I haven't had the chance to tell you about him. He would have been so proud of you tonight, Ethan. So proud." It was a private moment, and I felt like an intruder witnessing it. I moved away, giving them space to share this connection, but the significance wasn't lost on me. Ethan had discovered a link to his absent father through his art, a connection that went beyond the techniques his mother had taught him. As the evening progressed, I noticed something else remarkable happening. Students who had previously ignored or even mocked Ethan were bringing their parents over to meet him, introducing him as the best artist in our grade, or the guy who's teaching me how to draw. Even Brad, accompanied by his well-dressed parents, stopped by Ethan's display. "This is Ethan," he said to his father, a tall man with an expensive watch and impatient manner. "He's the one who helped me with my perspective drawing." Brad's father gave Ethan and his mother a cursory nod, clearly ready to move on, but Brad's mother paused to actually look at the artwork. "These are quite impressive," she said, leaning in to study the apartment building drawing. "You have a real gift, young man." Ethan thanked her shyly, and for a moment there was an awkward silence as two families from vastly different economic backgrounds stood face to face, connected only by their children and a shared appreciation for art. Then Mrs. Thompson did something unexpected. She extended her hand to Brad's mother and said, "I'm Lisa Thompson, Ethan's mom. Your son has been very kind to help Ethan feel welcome in the art club." I nearly choked at this revision of history, but I understood what she was doing. She was offering Brad a graceful way to move forward, to reframe their relationship without the burden of past bullying. Brad looked startled, then grateful, as his mother replied, "That's wonderful to hear. Brad's never shown much interest in art before this year. I think your son has been a good influence." As they continued chatting, I caught Ethan's eye. He gave me a small smile and a tiny shrug, as if to say, "It's easier this way." And maybe he was right. Maybe sometimes the kindest thing we can do is allow people the space to become better than they were, without constantly reminding them of their past mistakes. The festival was scheduled to end at 8:30 p.m., and as the time approached, I could see Mrs. Thompson checking her watch anxiously. She would need to return to the hospital soon for the remainder of her shift. Before they left, Ms. Thompson gathered several teachers and students around Ethan's display for an informal presentation. "I want to recognize one of our most promising young artists," she announced. "Ethan Miller's work shows not only technical skill, but also a deep empathy and attention to the world around him. These qualities will serve him well not only in art, but in life." She presented Ethan with a certificate of recognition from the art department, and everyone applauded. Ethan's face flushed with embarrassment but also unmistakable pride. As the crowd dispersed and Ethan and his mother prepared to leave, I overheard Ms. Thompson say something that stuck with me. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, "I want you to know that Ethan has not only impressed us with his talent but with his character. He's already giving back, teaching other students and sharing his gift. That speaks to how he was raised." Mrs. Thompson's tired face brightened with these words. In a world that often judged her by her uniform and income level, here was someone seeing the true value of her greatest achievement, raising a son with both talent and compassion. As they walked toward the exit, Ethan turned back and caught my eye. He mouthed a simple "thank you," whether for my small role in getting his mother there, or for something larger, I wasn't sure. What I did know was that this wasn't the end of Ethan's story. It was just the beginning. The Monday after the Winter Arts Festival, there was a different energy in the art classroom. Students who had never spoken to each other were now chatting about the displays they'd seen, comparing notes on techniques and styles. Ethan, typically so quiet, was at the center of several conversations, answering questions about his drawing process with newfound confidence. Ms. Thompson began class with an announcement that made the room buzz with excitement. "I have some extraordinary news," she said, her eyes finding Ethan. "A representative from the City Arts Council attended our festival, and they were particularly impressed by one student's work." My heart raced. I knew what was coming. Ethan Miller has been invited to display his work at the City Spring Art Exhibition in March. This is an honor typically reserved for high school students and adult artists. The room erupted in applause. Ethan sat frozen, his expression a mixture of disbelief and joy. Brad, surprisingly, was clapping loudest of all. Additionally, Ms. Thompson continued when the noise died down, they're offering Ethan a scholarship to attend the Summer Arts Academy downtown. This was huge. The Summer Arts Academy was an intensive program that cost thousands of dollars, putting it far out of reach for most families, especially someone in Ethan's situation. After class, Ethan approached Ms. Thompson's desk where I was helping organize supplies. "I can't accept the scholarship," he said quietly. "My mom needs me to watch my younger sister during summer break while she works." Ms. Thompson's face fell. "Oh, Ethan, this is such an opportunity. Maybe we could find another solution for your sister?" Ethan shook his head firmly. "My family comes first. Always." I watched him walk away, his shoulders straight despite his disappointment. In that moment, I admired him more than ever. His talent was extraordinary, but his character was even more impressive. That night I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan's situation. There had to be a way for him to attend the academy without leaving his family in a difficult position. The next morning I arrived at school early and knocked on the principal's office door. I'd never done anything like this before, but something was pushing me forward. "I have an idea," I blurted out when Principal Ramirez looked up from his paperwork. "It's about Ethan Miller and the Summer Arts Academy." To my surprise, he listened intently as I outlined my proposal, using part of Ethan's scholarship to create a paid position for a responsible high school student to watch Ethan's sister during the program hours. The academy only ran from 9 to 2, meaning Ethan could still help at home in the late afternoons and evenings. Principal Ramirez leaned back in his chair. "That's actually quite creative," he admitted. "Let me make some calls to the Arts Council about restructuring the scholarship." Within a week, a solution was arranged. The scholarship would cover Ethan's tuition and materials, with a small stipend allocated for his sister's care. Ms. Thompson's niece, a responsible high school junior, was willing to take on the job. When the plan was presented to Ethan and his mother, they were overwhelmed with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you all," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice thick with emotion. "This means so much to our family." "Just let Ethan keep drawing," Ms. Thompson replied simply. "That's all the thanks we need." As winter thawed into spring, I watched Ethan continue to blossom. The upcoming exhibition gave him a focus I'd never seen before. He spent hours in the art room after school, working on a new series of drawings that showed slices of life from around our neighborhood. The tired bus driver who knew everyone's name, the elderly couple who held hands at the corner cafe, the firefighters playing basketball during their breaks. One afternoon in late February, I stayed after school to finish a science project and passed by the art room. Through the half-open door, I could see Ethan working intently on a large canvas, his first painting from what I could tell. Ms. Thompson sat nearby, occasionally offering guidance but mostly just watching. I paused, not wanting to interrupt. "It's coming along beautifully," Ms. Thompson said as Ethan stepped back to assess his work. "But remember what I told you about shadows. They're never just gray or black." Ethan nodded, mixing colors on his palette. "They carry the colors of what's around them," he recited, "just more subdued." "Exactly," Ms. Thompson beamed. "You're a natural teacher, Ethan. Have you ever thought about that as a career? Combining art with teaching?" Ethan looked thoughtful as he applied a subtle blue-purple shadow to his painting. "I never thought I could be a teacher," he admitted, "but I do like helping others see things differently." "That's the essence of teaching," Ms. Thompson replied, "and the world needs more art teachers who actually understand what it's like to not have all the resources." This conversation wasn't meant for me, so I quietly moved on. But the seed of an idea had been planted, not just in Ethan's mind, but in mine as well. The following week, our school newspaper ran a feature on Ethan's upcoming exhibition. Predictably, this broader recognition changed how some students treated him. People who had never given him a second glance were suddenly claiming to be his friends. A few popular girls giggled whenever he walked by. Ethan handled it all with remarkable poise, neither letting it go to his head nor seeming bitter about the sudden shift. He remained most comfortable in the art room, where relationships had been built on genuine appreciation rather than social climbing. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I found Brad alone in the art room, struggling with a watercolor landscape. No one else had arrived for the club meeting yet. "Need help?" I asked, surprised to find him practicing without an audience. He looked up, embarrassed. "I can't get the trees right. They look like weird green blobs." I sat down across from him. "Have you asked Ethan? He's really good with landscapes." Brad's expression was complicated. "I don't want to keep bothering him. Everyone's always asking him for help now." "I think he'd be happy to help you," I said. "He doesn't hold grudges." Brad focused intensely on his painting. "Yeah, well, he should. I was a total jerk to him." "People change," I said simply. "You're here in art club every week, aren't you?" "My dad thinks it's stupid," Brad admitted. "Says I should focus on sports if I want a scholarship. But my mom's been different since the festival. She keeps buying me art supplies and asking to see what I'm working on." I was processing this glimpse into Brad's home life when Ethan arrived, shaking raindrops from his jacket. He paused when he saw us, then walked over. "That's looking good," he said, nodding at Brad's landscape. "You're getting better with the brush control." Brad looked up. "The trees are terrible." Ethan studied the painting. "You're trying to paint individual leaves? For this size, just suggest them instead." He picked up a brush. "May I?" Brad nodded, and Ethan demonstrated a dabbing technique on the corner of the paper. "See? The texture creates the feeling of leaves without trying to draw each one." Brad tried the technique on his painting, and his face lit up when it worked. "That's way better. Thanks, man." Just then, Ms. Thompson entered with several other students, and the moment passed. But I'd witnessed something significant, a genuine connection forming between two boys who, by all social rules of middle school, should have remained enemies. As March approached, excitement about Ethan's exhibition grew. Ms. Thompson arranged for our entire art class to take a field trip to the gallery on opening day. Permission slips went home, and parents volunteered to chaperone. The morning of the exhibition, we boarded school buses in high spirits. Ethan was unusually quiet, staring out the window as the familiar buildings of our neighborhood gave way to the more impressive architecture of downtown. The gallery was housed in a renovated factory building, with high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and polished concrete floors. Most of us had never been in such a space before, and there was a nervous energy as we filed in, suddenly aware of how loud our voices sounded in the cavernous room. Ethan's work was displayed in a section labeled Emerging Voices, alongside pieces by talented high school students and a few adult newcomers to the art scene. His drawings and his new painting were professionally framed and lit, making them look even more impressive than they had at our school festival. What struck me most, though, was seeing Ethan's work through the eyes of strangers. Art lovers moved slowly from piece to piece, spending real time with his drawings, commenting thoughtfully to companions. I overheard a bearded man in a black turtleneck say, "The social commentary here is subtle but powerful. Look at the economic contrasts in this apartment building piece." Ethan stood slightly apart from his display, watching people's reactions with wide eyes. Ms. Thompson stayed close, occasionally introducing him to gallery staff or steering over particularly appreciative visitors. "You should be very proud," I heard one older woman tell him. "These pieces show remarkable empathy and technical skill for someone your age." Ethan thanked her politely, but I could see he was overwhelmed by all the attention. During a quieter moment, I made my way to his side. "How does it feel seeing your work here?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "Scary. Amazing. Weird." He gestured around the gallery. "I never thought people like this would look at my drawings." "People like what?" I asked. "You know, important people. Art people." He lowered his voice. "Rich people." I followed his gaze to where a couple in expensive-looking clothes were studying his painting of our school courtyard in winter. "They're just people," I said. "And they're seeing what we've all seen, that you have a gift." Ethan shook his head slightly. "It's not just a gift, though. My mom always says gifts need to be developed. She worked extra shifts to buy me my first real sketchbook when I was 7. She'd be too tired to eat dinner sometimes, but she'd still sit and watch me draw." This glimpse into his home life hit me hard. The sacrifices his mother had made weren't visible on the gallery walls, but they were present in every pencil stroke. Just then, a commotion near the gallery entrance caught everyone's attention. Mrs. Thompson had arrived, still in her hospital uniform, her hair coming loose from its usual tight bun. She looked flustered but determined as she scanned the room for her son. When she spotted Ethan, her entire face transformed with pride. She rushed over and enveloped him in a tight hug, whispering something in his ear that made him smile wider than I'd ever seen. "I thought you couldn't get off work," he said when she finally released him. "My supervisor insisted," she replied. "Said it's not every day your son has his first gallery showing." She straightened his collar affectionately. "I couldn't miss this, Ethan. Not for anything." Ms. Thompson approached with a tall man in an expensive suit. "Mrs. Thompson, Ethan, I'd like you to meet Mr. Callahan from the Arts Council. He's been a major supporter of bringing young artists' work to this gallery." Mr. Callahan extended his hand first to Ethan, then to his mother. "Your son has remarkable talent, Mrs. Thompson." The council was particularly impressed by his ability to find beauty and dignity in everyday scenes. Mrs. Thompson beamed. "That's all him. He's always noticed things other people miss." "Actually," Mr. Callahan continued, "that's what I wanted to discuss. In addition to the Summer Academy Scholarship, we have a year-round mentorship program that pairs promising young artists with professionals in the field. We'd like to offer Ethan a place." The significance of this opportunity was written all over Mrs. Thompson's face. This wasn't just about art lessons anymore. This was about doors opening, pathways appearing that neither of them had imagined possible. "The program includes transportation," Mr. Callahan added, seeming to understand their practical concerns, "and all necessary supplies." As they continued discussing details, I drifted away, giving them privacy for this important moment. I found myself standing before Ethan's original apartment building drawing, the one that had started everything in our art class months ago. Looking at it now, professionally mounted and lit, I noticed details I'd missed before. The small symbol of a medical cross in the window where Ethan had drawn his mother. The empty chair beside the boy that suggested an absent father. The care taken with each small human story playing out behind the windows. It wasn't just technical skill that made Ethan's work special. It was his ability to see beauty and meaning in lives that many would consider ordinary or even invisible. "It's something, isn't it?" I turned to find Brad standing beside me, hands in his pockets, studying the drawing. "Yeah," I agreed. "It really is." "You know what kills me?" Brad said quietly. "He could have made me look like a total jerk in his drawings, put me in there as the neighborhood bully or something, but he didn't." I looked at him, surprised by this moment of self-awareness. "Instead, he helped me get better," Brad continued. "Not just at art, but at—" He struggled to find the words. "At seeing things differently, I guess." As our class gathered to board the buses back to school, there was a new energy among us. We'd witnessed something significant, not just Ethan's recognition, but the power of art to change perspectives and connect people across divides. On the ride back, I sat next to Ethan, who was clutching a business card from Mr. Callahan and a small catalog from the exhibition with his name printed inside. "So are you going to do the mentorship program?" I asked. He nodded, still seeming dazed by how the day had unfolded. Mr. Callahan says if I keep developing, I might have a shot at art schools with scholarships. That's amazing, Ethan. He was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city streets giving way to our more modest neighborhood. You know what's weird? If Brad hadn't grabbed my drawing that day in class, none of this might have happened. I considered this. Maybe, or maybe your talent would have found another way to shine. Maybe, he agreed. But I'm actually kind of grateful to him now. Isn't that strange? Strange, yes, but also profound. Sometimes our greatest challenges become unexpected catalysts for growth. When we returned to school, Ms. Thompson had one final surprise. The art room had been decorated with streamers and a hand-painted banner reading, "Congratulations, Ethan." A small celebration had been arranged, with cupcakes and juice boxes supplied by parents. What touched me most was seeing students from across different social circles genuinely celebrating Ethan's success. The popular kids were there alongside the quiet bookworms, the athletes beside the theater kids. For one rare afternoon, the usual divisions of middle school had dissolved. As the small party wound down, I spotted Brad approaching Ethan with something hidden behind his back. "Hey, Miller," he said, shuffling uncomfortably. I made something for you." He brought his hands forward, revealing a clumsily wrapped package. Ethan took it hesitantly and unwrapped it to find a small wooden box. It was rough around the edges but carefully constructed and finished with a coat of varnish. When he opened it, compartments for art supplies were revealed inside. "My grandpa helped me make it," Brad explained quickly, "for your pencils and stuff, so they don't break anymore." The entire room had gone quiet, watching this exchange. Ethan ran his fingers along the edge of the box, his expression unreadable. Then he looked up at Brad. "This is really cool. Thank you." The simple acknowledgement seemed to lift a weight from Brad's shoulders. He nodded once awkwardly, then backed away. As students began filing out, Ms. Thompson called for everyone's attention one last time. "I want you all to remember this," she said, looking around at our faces. "Art isn't just about talent or technique. It's about seeing the world clearly and helping others to see it too. Ethan has reminded us all that extraordinary vision can come from anywhere, that we must look beyond the surface to find the true gifts in those around us." She turned to Ethan. "And you've taught us that true talent isn't diminished by broken pencils or limited resources. It finds a way to shine regardless." As we left the classroom that day, I knew we'd all been part of something special, not just witnessing the discovery of a young artist, but experiencing firsthand how art could transform a classroom, bridge social divides, and reveal the dignity in lives often overlooked. Years later, when I read about Ethan Miller receiving a full scholarship to a prestigious art school, I wasn't surprised. But what did surprise me was the subject of his acclaimed portfolio, a series titled Classroom Metamorphosis, depicting how a middle school art room became a place of belonging for students from all backgrounds. In one of the central pieces, a boy who looked suspiciously like Brad was shown building a wooden box while another figure, clearly Ethan, was drawing by the light of a single lamp. Between them, a teacher with kind eyes and stylish glasses watched over them both with equal care. The art critics praised the technical brilliance and emotional depth of the work, but they couldn't possibly understand its full significance. They hadn't been there to witness the real transformation, not just of a talented boy finding his path, but of an entire classroom learning to see each other more clearly through the eyes of art. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and comment below which part moved you the most. And before you go, there's a recommended video right next to this one that will give you goosebumps. Watch it now. What's the most valuable lesson you learned from this story?